set expectations, much the same as setting your timelines and communication. Set expectations on, what you will be creating. Like have packages and make those packages really clear again, so clients know what to expect, but then they also know what you don't do. And it's a common mistake when people first become social media managers. They really want to do a good job and they over deliver and they do all this work, and then you end up getting quite burnt out.
You are now listening to Marketing Over One, a podcast where I chat with the marketers behind the companies and the campaigns you see in the world today. They share everything: how they got into marketing, the strategies and the tools that they use, how they charge for their services, and the mistakes and successes they have made in their career. Each episode is unfiltered and a masterclass. So come join us. I am your host as always, Olawumi Olaniyi. Hi everyone. On today's episode, I have Elise Dalrymple-Keast, the director and co-founder of Brain Sitters, a social media marketing agency specializing in social strategy, social media management, content creation, and digital advertising. Previously, Elise was a marketing and communications manager, a video content creator, and a content producer. Elise is also the first social media manager I'm interviewing on this podcast, so I'm pretty excited for this episode. Thank you for joining me on this episode, Elise.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're most welcome. Glad to be doing this with you. All right, let's get rolling. A social media manager at Bolaji Billions on Twitter tweeted early last year that if you're looking for a social media manager and you want them to resume urgently, she puts it to you that you would only get a social media poster. Okay. She explains that the reason she says this is that there should be an onboarding process so that the social media manager can understand how to work with you and your brand. This tweet sparked a lot of conversations on Twitter because people were saying, no, you should be able to hit the ground running, or you should be able to start immediately, especially if I'm paying for that time, in quotes, in the case of a full-time role. So, what is your opinion about an onboarding process, and how do you onboard your clients?
Yeah, so how we work is we don't do anything without a plan first. So our whole shebang is make a plan, make it happen, make it matter.
Yeah.
So as part of our, before we even onboard any accounts, we talk through people. We talk with our clients or with potential clients. Okay, do you have a content bank?
Okay.
Do you have brand guidelines? And do you have a social media strategy?
Yeah.
They need to have all of these things before we just start posting, because then exactly what that post said, you just have someone who's posting on social media. You're paying a lot of money for someone to just chuck random things out there and hope that it works.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have the brand guidelines, essentially, which is colors, logos, fonts, some rules around that, so that everyone is on the same page about how the social media content is going to look, as well as photography guidelines or this and that. A content bank. So a lot of social media managers don't create the content necessarily. They might be able to do that as well, but that's a separate job, separate to the actual management of it.
Yeah.
But what they will do is they'll take your existing content and then add design elements and text and curate it nicely and add copy. So do you have that content bank? If not, then let's work together to get you a content bank.
Yeah.
Then the third aspect is a strategy. Do you have social media pillars? Do we know why we are posting on this platform? It's a lot of energy to post on a platform, and if your audience isn't there, then there's kind of no point.
Yeah.
And if the audience is there, then we need to know why that audience on that platform should engage in our account, and we need to make sure that we're creating content that's relevant to them, adds value, or is entertaining, so that they actually engage with it.
Yeah.
So once we've answered all those questions, then let's say they've got the brand guidelines, they've got the imagery, we work with them to do a social media strategy. Then the next step is actually the physical onboarding of accounts. So that's things like getting passwords, getting access, setting them up in our social media management tool, which is how we get approvals, educating them on how to use that platform, and then some rules of engagement or some guidelines of how they can expect to work with us. For instance, we have monthly or fortnightly catch-ups. And then essentially just a little bit of a chat through how things work on a day-to-day basis, if there are any changes throughout the month, just understanding those processes.
Okay, I'm really glad you brought this up because you mentioned that a social media manager doesn't necessarily create the content, that is an entirely different role. And I'm really glad you brought that up because most employers, actually most people, confuse the role of a social media manager with a content creator. Nowadays, you'd see job titles as social media managers / content creator or social media manager and content creator. It's very common, especially on LinkedIn or even most popular job platforms like Indeed and Co. And I think this stems from people with a mindset that social media management is not a big deal. People think that if you're a social media manager, you're just posting. Or content creation is not hard. You're just shooting with your phone. It's just to drop your phone and dance or do something else, and automatically you're a video content creator. Now, in your career journey, you have been a video content creator at some point before focusing majorly on social media management. So you're experienced in both fields. Is there any difference between a social media manager and a content creator? And if yes, what are these differences?
Yeah, there is absolutely a difference.
Okay.
So a content creator is all in the title. They're the people actually creating the content. They're coming up with a funny video idea or like a recipe or something like that.
Yeah.
They're the ones filming it, editing it, doing the voiceover, or potentially they're taking photos and editing that together.
Okay.
Whereas the social media manager coordinates
Okay.
all of that. So they are the ones who have the overall strategy, and so they are the ones who might say, I really want this set of videos, and so they will work with a content creator and brief a content creator in on the kind of things they're wanting. They'll get that content, they'll work it in with their plan. They know they've also got static posts going out, they know they've got stories. They're essentially the ones who are controlling all the little bits and pieces to make sure that all of your social media content goes out on time, who's reactive. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a needed crossover of skills.
Okay.
I would say that pretty much any social media should have some basic design capability, like just on Canva to be able to add design elements, should have some basic copywriting skills as well to write good social media posts and to be able to come up with designed, design tiles that have text on them, and then even like capture stuff on their phone for stories or even capture footage for reels.
Okay.
Like that I think needs to be part of it in most businesses. They do need someone who has some skills in that department, but a dedicated content creator just spends their whole time coming up with content ideas. And sometimes you do come across a freelancer who creates content and manages the social media, but often they keep quite a small client load just because that is so much work.
Yeah.
Social media management is a lot of work and content creation is a lot of work. Even simple reels and simple TikToks, you've got to film it, and sure, you could film it quickly on an iPhone, but then you've got to edit it, you've got to find the right audio, sync it up with the audio, upload it everywhere. And so one reel might take anywhere between 2 to 4 hours to make. And if you're expected to make a reel every day or 3 reels a week, that is a lot of time.
Yeah, that takes a lot of time per week.
Totally, especially then you're checking captions as well. And depending on the management tool you use, or if it's going to Instagram and TikTok, you might have separate audios, or you might edit them slightly differently to be more optimized for each platform.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it. And so if you're expecting your in-house social media manager to also be the person who's physically making all that content, they're going to be quite limited in what they can do, the amount of platforms that they can serve. Whereas if you let your social media manager work with a content creator, you could have a lot more reels or creative content coming out because the social media manager just briefs the content creator, says, I need videos on this, and then the content creator can work on just creating that, and then that frees up the social media manager's time to do their job, which is managing and coordinating the social media and working to the strategy and responding and engaging with the community.
Yeah. A quick thing to add, if you haven't subscribed yet and you love the content of Marketing Over Wine, please do so and share with all your friends. Now let's get back to the episode. Like I said, I think this debate stems from people who feel like social media management is just social media posting. They feel like the role of a social media manager is just to coordinate all the content and throw it onto a social media platform and add one caption and hashtag or something like that. And they don't see it exactly as a big deal. Or for the video content, I tried recording video content for Marketing Over Wine and good lord. I know how stressful and how long that took. To be able to get one clip, I had, I think, 10 different attempts for just one clip. For a 2 second or 3 seconds clip. And I needed to create about 10 of those clips. So at the end, I had over 100 different clips to coordinate and start picking. Which of them is the best, which of them fits well with the next clip. And taking all of that to CapCut, that is an entire workload that takes hours. And people really need to stop looking down on these two different roles, social media management and content creation, and trying to lump them into just one role.
I think the problem is because everyone has a social media account, or almost everyone has a social media account. And so people think, I can post on social media. Why would I pay someone? And why would I pay for someone to do, like, pay someone that much to do it?
Exactly.
But then it's like, well, why aren't you posting on social media? Or if you are, why is it not working for you? Oh, probably because there is actually skill and strategy and a lot of thought that goes into it. And when you see accounts who have really clever social media and it's really engaging and they've got a huge following, that's not an accident. You know, like a lot of dedicated work goes into that. And you can't just make it up, I guess, on the side or do it as an afterthought. If you do it as an afterthought, it's most likely not really going to work for you.
Thank you for setting the record straight. Now I want to dig deeper into your career journey. You have sort of been in marketing your whole career. You studied communications, politics, and international relations as your first degree. Then you went on to be a digital content producer and copywriter. Later, you worked as a marketing assistant, a video content creator, a marketing and communications manager, before settling into social media when you co-founded Brand Sitters, your social media marketing agency. So what drew you exactly to social media management? Of all the roles you have had along your career journey, why did you decide that, I want to help business owners with social strategy, social media management, content creation, and digital advertising? Yeah,
that's a really good question. The main answer is it aligned with my skill set and I could do it from anywhere. So how I even ended up starting an agency and getting into the social media side of things was in a way accidental. So I was studying communications. I knew that I was interested in marketing. I liked being able to be creative, but also be quite analytical and strategic, and marketing allowed me to do both. And then what appealed to me with anything in the digital realm was that you could do it remotely. And I knew that I loved travel. I knew that I loved the ability to be flexible. So it seemed like a good option to do a service that was in demand and to have that flexibility. And how it came about is I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to go on an overseas trip to India for 6 weeks, which was amazing. But that fell in the university break, which is normally, as a uni student, where you work as much as possible to save money to get you through the year when university gets really busy. And so I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm not going to have a chance to save any money. And so I went online on a student job site here in New Zealand and looked for literally any job that I could find. And I found one where a lady just wanted me to make PowerPoints for her business. And I was like, I can make a PowerPoint. And then she met me and she said, look, our marketing manager's going on maternity leave. Do you want that role? It was just like, a few hours a week. But I obviously leapt at that. And then through her, I picked up lots of other small businesses who I helped out with not only their social media, but also some design stuff, some email newsletters, like some strategy. I was also still learning myself. I was still at university. And then I finished that. I was still doing that. I picked up a job at the Hilton, which was again about 20 hours a week doing their marketing, which again was heavy on the social media. And so then when I started Brand Sitters with my co-founder, it wasn't just social social media, we also did SEO and email marketing and Facebook ads and Google ads, all of which I taught myself in a couple over the space of a few months. But social media was a really big thing a lot of people were interested in. And because we were young, I think a lot of business owners looked at us and just thought, you look kind of like my kids, and my kids spend a lot of time on social media, so I trust you to manage it. And so, that is honestly how we got into it. And it's an area that we're comfortable in. You know, my co-founder and I both grew up with social media, so we're super comfortable on it. We know how it works. We know what works and what doesn't. And that's really how we ended up there. Now, with my role and what I do work a lot more on the paid side of social media, especially because with the current economy, businesses would prefer to outsource their paid advertising over just their social media, just because organic social media you could do in-house if you are in a little bit of a crunch, whereas the paid side of social media is quite complex and is something that makes a lot of sense to outsource. But I find that my knowledge of what works well with organic social media really feeds into what I know will work well in ads. A lot of the time, what would perform well as a post will often perform well as an ad as long as you set it up correctly or have clever accompanying copy. So they all feed into each other. In answer to your question as to why, it was the lifestyle was really what attracted me to it, but also it is the ability to be creative and also be strategic.
All right, thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability.
Awesome.
Speaking of misconceptions, what misconceptions do people have about what you do? What misconceptions and expectations have you had people say about social media management that have made your jaw drop? Literally. What is this? How is this social media management?
I think, two things we've sort of touched on already. One is the cost involved. Often going to a social media agency, a lot of businesses are surprised at how much it costs to outsource your social media. But that does come down to, I think, often people thinking, but I could just post on social media. It's not hard. And not having a full appreciation for just how much work goes into it and how complex it is. So that's one big misconception. And then the other one is, that they outsource to a social media manager and they never have to do anything again. Whereas it should be an ongoing conversation between a business owner or a marketing manager and their social media manager if they're outsourcing it, especially because the social media manager will want to know what's happening in your business, what can we talk about. They'll also need updated content. So if your social media manager is editing reels for you, not filming but editing them, they will need footage. And so they might give you ideas on footage that you can grab from around the workplace or from a factory if you had one and things like that.
Or a conference if they have.
Exactly. So that needs to be an ongoing conversation, and there needs to be fresh content coming through all the time, and there needs to be just an ongoing back and forth. It's not just, I've outsourced it, I don't have to do anything anymore. It's yes, a social media manager should make it easy and take it off your plate, but they still will want to have a conversation to make sure that they're talking about things that are happening in your business and making sure that they're topical and relevant and talking about exciting releases and knowing that there's a new product coming out in 3 months' time and can start planning for the lead up to that rather than being told a week in advance a new product's coming out next week, we need to do a post on it, and it's just no, I need to create a good strategy for how I'm going to talk about that on social media in the lead up and build hype.
And this is especially important if a company or a brand or a business is trying to be an authority in the industry, because in every industry there are trends that happen from time to time, or even with the increase of AI, with the increase in people using AI, there needs to be this human feel and getting on those trends at the right time. It's like you're talking about International Women's Day 2 months after International Women's Month. You're talking about Black History Month 2 months after that has happened. So it needs to be at the right time, getting on the trends at that time, exactly when it's hot in quotes, and not when everything has simmered down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that like responsive stuff, if there's trends that happen in the moment, it really depends on the relationship you have with your social media and the retainer that you have. Like, in some instances it might be you have a set amount of posts per month and it's done in advance, which is usually how we work.
Yeah.
But then depending on, say you've got a relationship with your social media manager where they are checking all the time for trends like day to day, and you've got a high level of trust in them, potentially you give them the autonomy to be able to come up with trends and send it through. But again, that's all an ongoing conversation, and it just needs to be a continual open line of conversation.
Thank you for shedding more light on that. So another of the misconceptions in social media marketing or social media management is that presently there's a lot of debate in the social media management space. People believe that as a social media manager, you need to have a social media presence and a large following on social media to prove your worth. The idea is that if you have 10K followers, you can do the same for my brand. Other people say that you don't need to, and that's why a portfolio or testimonials from past clients exists. I even saw someone say that if you have too much time for your personal online presence, it's a sign that you don't give 100% to your clients. And the person was like, okay, if you guys are going to bring up a propaganda that social media managers need to have a large following, then I can also bring up the propaganda that if you have a large following or if you have a very notable social media presence, then it means you're not giving your clients your 100%. So, what is your view about this? The social media managers need a very large following to be a social media manager.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say no, they don't, just for a variety of reasons.
Okay.
You can have expertise on social media from working with lots of businesses and be quite a private person yourself.
Yeah.
That's totally okay. You don't need to be public on social media to be good at social media management. So I would 100% look for testimonials in a portfolio over their own personal social media following. Just because they are like two different things. Whether or not it's a reflection of if someone is posting a lot, they don't have enough time for clients. I've had that thought in the past myself. I don't think it's necessarily true. I think some people put working on their personal brand as an important part of their business development plan. And so they structure that in. And so I don't think that's a red flag. What I would say though is someone who is an influencer first and has a high following for being an influencer doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to run a brand's social media. Just because, like, maybe for a fashion brand, potentially if they're like an influencer who's really into fashion, potentially they could do a collaboration. But I do think it's very different coming from, say, it's just yourself and your social media presence is because your feed is very aesthetic looking and you post nice pretty pictures of yourself or photos of yourself looking really good, and then a brand approaches you to, I don't know, a food brand approaches you to help with their launch or a strategy for their launch. It's well, a person building the brand of a person who looks great in nice clothes to launch a yogurt, unless they have a portfolio of clients and they've got a professional background working in that, then great. But if not, I wouldn't recommend that brand to go for someone just because they have heaps of followers and haven't had a background in social media management or working for brands. But it would be a conversation to learn a bit more about their credentials, because someone might have a great Instagram following and have heaps of experience as a social media manager, but that's just a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you for that. I also like how someone said it on LinkedIn. A particular lady brought up the conversation on LinkedIn and someone replied that, okay, so this means if you want to visit a surgeon, the person must have had the same surgery done on them. Or if you want to visit an optician, they must be wearing glasses. Because that's the same idea if you need someone to have a large following before hiring them for a social media management role. It's like saying, okay, because of a large following, you expect Kim Kardashian to be able to manage your social media page well.
Yeah,
that's a very weird way to look at it. But if a social media manager has a large following, I think there might be some benefits to it, because maybe they have the reach to a larger audience. But again, so far I have been interviewing guests on this podcast. Many of them have touted that referrals from past clients have brought them more clients than having a social media presence or a personal brand presence on social media. So I think there are different ways to look at it, as you have explained.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that, like for us, for instance, on Brand Sitters, we've got the Brand Sitters Instagram, and we don't have a huge following. It's like 700, so it's really not that big. But it is a well thought out. So it is a well thought out Instagram. You know, our content is looks nice and it's engaging. So I think if a social media manager or a social media management agency does have a social media presence, it doesn't need to have a huge following. But I think if a social media manager approached me and their like brand profile looked terrible, I would have second thoughts. But like if it had a small following but it was well executed, I would be fine with that, because I'm not worried about their own following. I'm more interested in what they've done for clients. But yeah, it's much the same as any portfolio, right? Or any kind of the same with how you present yourself. Like you wouldn't show up to a pitch or a job interview looking untidy. Like I didn't want to show up to this podcast looking untidy. So it's, you know, a little bit of give or take. In regards to getting clients through social media and building a personal brand, we've had a few clients come through who found us on Instagram. Not many, but definitely a few, considering our following isn't big. The personal brand side of things, over the past like 6 months, I've started focusing on building my own LinkedIn presence. And it's not something I've gotten clients through for anything yet, but I've made so many connections and built such a community and such a network, which has just been amazing in terms of meeting people. And then people who I've met have then put me in touch or have put me forward for amazing opportunities that I never would have otherwise heard of. Like being on this podcast came as a recommendation from Callum, who just found me on LinkedIn. So there's definitely a lot of benefits to having a personal brand, but I wouldn't say it's a requirement for someone to be a good social media manager. Okay.
This is where I do a mic drop. Boom.
I can drop this one.
Speaking of portfolios, content writers, copywriters, and other marketers had content pieces, such as the articles they have worked on, or landing pages, or scripts for videos that they worked on, to their portfolios. What should be in a social media manager's portfolio? Is it a screenshot of pages managed? Is it the before and after? You know, like this is before we started managing a page. This is how it looked like. This is the number of visits. For Instagram, when you have a creator or business account, it shows you the number of accounts reached. So is it something like that? What exactly should be in a social media manager's portfolio?
Yeah, statistics and analytics are one of the most important things, I would say, because that's your actual data on how did you meaningfully grow that profile. So that would be the biggest thing that I would look for. Obviously some examples of like the creative work and copy that they've done, just some screenshots of posts they've created or a grid. Before and after, obviously if it is a dramatic transformation, then like that's awesome. But quite often a lot of brands, their social media isn't terrible, or at least if you're working with like a really small business who've done it themselves, then maybe it's a big transformation. But often for bigger businesses, like their social media doesn't look awful. It's just they don't have the capacity to manage it themselves. They don't have the strategy behind it, or they want to be more consistent, and like that's often when they'll outsource it. And so it won't be a dramatic before and after, but it's more about the, like, I guess, quantity and quality of posts and what meaningful changes that you drove for them through social media and what growth you were able to achieve or what community you were able to build.
All right, let's talk money. Another issue social media managers face, maybe more than other marketers, is how to price their services. Content writers or copywriters charge per word or per article or per project. For you, how do you set pricing for your clients? Is it per deliverables or is it per criteria? Maybe when you have to be the face of the brand or not. How exactly do you set pricing?
Yeah, so we have a few packages that have a set amount of content per month.
Okay, so per packages.
Yeah, packages. So it might be the base one might just be static content, and it might get you, say, like 2 posts a week and then some stories and a monthly meeting. And the next one might incorporate 1 or 2 reels. And it's important to note that none of this includes creation of content.
Yeah.
This is all using, like, we will edit footage.
Okay.
If we get sent footage, we will do the editing. The same with any images that the client supplies. We will, add designed elements where relevant or design up posts, but we're not taking any photos, we're not shooting any video.
Yeah.
And so that'll be the next one up, and the next stage up will again have more reels in it, more content.
Okay.
Might have some more stories, might include an hour of community engagement.
Yeah.
So that is how we price it per deliverable in set packages, which just makes it easy. Like, we can tailor the packages after people have gotten in touch, but the packages give a good indication, and it's just typically what people come to us want.
Okay.
If people want us to shoot content, to be honest, that's something we've moved away from a little bit, purely because it's just for us in-house. We've got clients all over the country with product. It's a lot of logistics.
Yeah.
So often it's just as easy to work with someone who is a dedicated content creator, and then they create the content. If the client isn't doing it in-house, we can brief them, or perhaps the client has a direct relationship with that creator, and we just tell the client what we're wanting in terms of content.
Yeah.
And give them the brief, which they then pass on to the creator. So we don't necessarily do that ourselves in-house anymore, but we used to charge a separate content creation fee, which was maybe like a half-day shoot, and we would try to do it no faces, because we're not paid to be talent.
Yeah.
Again, that's something more that a dedicated content creator would do. But if someone were to do that in-house and then they wanted people's faces in it, that would incur a talent fee for the brand to use the face of the face of someone who's not their own team.
Yeah, that's quite insightful. Thank you for that. I know earlier we've talked about the following that you have on social media doesn't necessarily make you a great social media manager. So presently, with the rise in AI tools and the large number of creators popping up, video content creators on the internet, what does it take to become a social media manager in 2024?
That is a very good question. I would say what it would take is, first of all, knowing your boundaries and what you do and don't do.
Okay.
I think especially clients are becoming a lot more aware. I think businesses in general are appreciating a lot more how much goes into social media management and how powerful it can be.
Yeah.
But it's really important that you going into social media management knows, am I just going to edit and coordinate and add design elements, or am I going to be on that content creation side? Am I going to be going in and filming the content and doing photography and doing that side of things?
Yeah.
But ensuring you break up the pricing for that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would say it really just takes approaching businesses who you like getting to know them, messaging them, engaging, and then messaging them and saying that you would love to be involved in their social media management. A lot of businesses, I think currently, just with lots of recessions going on, it's been economically a really tough time.
Yeah.
So a lot of businesses have taken that in-house. And so currently 2024 might be a little bit of a harder time to crack in. But if you're someone who's just getting started and you just want experience, you just want to give it a go, you could approach a brand and just say, hey, I'd love to help out on your socials.
Yeah.
Work with your team and just message them and see what they say. That would be the big thing.
Okay.
With the rise in AI tools, I actually think that's an advantage for a social media manager, because you can get help with ideas for copy. You can brief ChatGPT to give you ideas for content creation. If you've got a paid AI tool, you can even generate imagery. I wouldn't say you can lean on that entirely, because AI is fantastic, but at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff still comes out like it's computer generated. So you need to know how to take an idea and then improve on it, make it more tailored to the brand voice, make it I guess, make it more engaging and then make it your own and relevant to this strategy.
Make it more human-like.
Yes, exactly. So you need to be able to leverage AI, but still make it human. You can't just chuck everything, say to a client, yep, I manage your social media, chuck everything into ChatGPT, make no changes and post it. Like, that's not going to work.
Yeah. There was a thread on Twitter for social media managers' pet peeves. And the comments had me nodding and laughing at the same time. So let me ask you the same thing. What are some of your pet peeves in social media management? I'll go first. When the client logs into the account and makes a post on their own without telling you, and you just come online and you're like, when did I make this post? So what are yours?
Yeah, that is a huge one, especially like some clients, you might have an agreement that they do some posts, you do some posts, and it's all good. But yeah, it's certainly when you see clients do that and you've got this beautiful plan laid out and then they post something which is just completely off brand, you're like, why? Why did you do this to me? I think that's a big one. Make it go viral is a classic one. I think plenty of social media managers can relate with that. And the other one is like people have maybe started doing social media management. They've been doing it for a month, maybe 2, and they're like, why do we not have 20,000 followers yet? Or you know, I'm not seeing any sales. Where's the ROI? And it's that. Again, another misconception is that social media doesn't generate immediate sales, so therefore it's not a good investment, whereas it's building your brand, it's building community, it's building engagement, and
building trust.
Exactly. And like keeping your, like, if you're a brand that relies on repeat purchases, like peanut butter for instance, you want people to stay top of mind. So yeah, I think people who 1 or 2 months in like panic or just want to change direction. Another one I mentioned earlier is when a client comes to you with, we've got a launch next week, you need to make it happen. Again, not great. Just because these things take time, you want to be able to launch them properly. So that is another big pet peeve.
Honestly, brand owners and marketing teams need to do better with social media management, for real.
Yes.
Because people just throw these things around without thinking too much about it. And the idea about what you talked about, when they have not made sales in, let's say, a month or 2, and instantly they want to change direction. People forget that building a brand and social media marketing, actually organic marketing in general, takes time, because one, you're moving people, like you mentioned, through the stages of the funnel. So first, they get to know your brand, they get to know your product, they get to know the features of your product and the value you can offer them, and then you lead them downwards through the stages of the funnel. I think people just expect that immediately a potential customer sees your product, they just jump up and say, yes, my card, take it, any amount you want. And that's a very huge mistake, because even if you're doing paid ads, there are several reports on this that up to 90% of people that see an advert will not purchase from you at that point, even if they need the product. So it has to be something reoccurring, something that keeps showing up in their faces, something that registers in their brain. It has to sink in. Sometimes it might be several months later, when they need a product, then they remember that, oh, I saw this advert somewhere, let me go and buy, let me buy and check it out now. And people forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to realize, if you were a brand and were running, say you had a billboard, realistically, you're not going to expect someone to see your billboard and buy the thing, because people are driving, from these logistic concerns. It's just not how it works. The reason why you have a billboard is because you want people to just see your brand and be top of mind and think of you.
Brand awareness.
Exactly. And so social media is similar. However, you actually have much more of an exact read on how many people your post has reached, and if people liked it or not. Did it get many impressions? Did people comment on it? Did they share it or save it? You get a lot more insights. But it's just understanding that social media it's almost your top of funnel, and then it's your attention. But you shouldn't be relying on it necessarily to drive sales.
Yeah.
Some businesses who've built a really engaged social media presence do get sales from it. Like we had a client who we do run ads for them and things like that, and they've got a really engaged presence, and then they put up one post that I think they'd got a new restock of this caramel sauce they made, and within an hour of that organic post going live, they had 15 people buy it.
Nice.
And it was just a random post that went out. And so there is power. People can buy from it.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time to get there, like that brand had nearly 30,000 followers. They'd been around for ages. We'd been working on their social media for about a year and being really intentional with it, posting a lot, learning, improving, optimizing, and then that happened. It wasn't like they came on board, we did that, and then it was just a runaway success.
Yeah.
So it's just important understanding that it's a long-term, any marketing should be a long-term game.
Yeah.
But social media and investment in having someone managing your social media is a long-term brand play rather than I need to generate sales right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Away from that, Instagram went from prioritizing single photo posts to carousels. Then they went to Reels and back again to prioritizing photo posts. Then they changed the icons, they changed the share buttons, they even changed the location of these icons that we've gotten used to several times in all of their updates. Twitter also went from Twitter to X, and the algorithm just went haywire. TikTok algorithm also changed. Social media platforms are constantly introducing new features and changing the app's look and algorithm. So how do we set social media marketing priorities when we know that everything changes in an instant?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in terms of how you set priorities, it goes back to what's the overarching strategy? Why are we on this platform? Why are we on social media? Why are we on Instagram? Why are we on TikTok? So starting there, why are we on there? And I think as long as you're really clear on that, that weathers you through everything. And that doesn't mean your content can't change, but like the overall mission and purpose of being on that platform should remain the same. It's fundamental.
Yeah.
So then how you set priorities really just aligns to that. And so it's like, okay, cool. So maybe let's just say that we are a peanut butter brand.
Okay.
And then we are on TikTok because we know that we bring out cookie flavored peanut butter and we bring out all these fun flavors and we know that Gen Z love it. We also know that parents love it and there's heaps of parents on TikTok. So therefore, that's why we're showing up on there. So every TikTok post that we do should be in a way that is either appealing to our parents' audience on there on how it can be incorporated as great snacks and how it's super yummy. And if we're appealing to Gen Z, it's essentially just funny.
Yeah.
Like how are we making this funny or like out the gate or like a little bit crazy? The actual execution of that changes, of course, with trends and with the algorithm and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, your overall North Star remains the same. So that helps you set priorities.
Yeah.
And then in terms of how you change it, you don't make a social media. I don't believe in any like rigid strategy that goes for a year or goes for even like 3 months.
Yeah, especially for social media.
Totally. It's just, it changes too quickly. Businesses move too fast.
Yeah.
If you could spend all your time doing on that and then a month later throw it out the window. So it's much better to have your purpose clear, have some content pillars clear, but then every month be optimizing, learning, looking at your insights and then tweaking your social media content and improving from there. So that's how you keep abreast of changes.
Yeah.
And then depending on if you've got an in-house social media manager or if you do have an agency who are really responsive, they might be creating content throughout the month, but it's more likely that they'll be looking at previous results and then batch creating content for the following month and then learning a month at a time.
Yeah. Winding down, earlier on you mentioned ChatGPT. I think you mentioned another tool that you also used for scheduling your content. So what tools do you use day to day as part of your social media management workflow? Let's classify them according to their usage. For example, Sparktoro for data collection, Sprout Social for scheduling, and so on and so forth. Yeah, your turn.
Yeah, so for our social media management, we use a platform called Loomly.
Okay.
It was just essentially a really nice balance of cost effective.
Okay.
Sprout Social is great, but when you're an agency and have multiple platforms with it, it gets really expensive. expensive.
Yeah.
And so we just thought that's actually not a cost we want to be incorporating into our packages or passing on to clients, and Loomly had a lot of the functionality. So we use Loomly to schedule the content, or we can submit it for approvals through there. Clients can approve it, it gets scheduled to go live. And then for reporting, we use Looker Studio, Google's Looker Studio, with a connector called Supermetrics, which incorporates our Google ad data, our Meta ad data, social media data, and that gets all housed within that dashboard. And at the end of each month, we'll go through, or the account manager will go through and add commentary on what happened throughout the month, explain some of the metrics that are there, explain any changes or optimizations that were made. And then we'll remind the client to look in there, or let them know that their commentary has been updated. They have access to their dashboard throughout the month. It's a live dashboard, but then the commentary gets added at the end of the month once the manager looks through the insights and adds some analysis and some interpretations.
Yeah.
So those would be the main ones. Otherwise, we generally use Canva for any post design and post creation. Otherwise, internally for setting priorities and to-do lists, we use ClickUp. But that is more of a project management tool. For the social media management itself, it's Canva, Loomly, and then Looker Studio.
All right. Now imagine this. You have been invited to speak at an event for social media managers. There are new social media managers there and existing social media managers. What are your favorite tips for social media management? You know what? Let's put a number to it. 5 of them. What are 5 of your favorite tips for social media managers?
Yeah. Number 1 would be strategy first. Strategy always. Everyone needs to be on the same page. If you don't have a strategy, it's easy for you to put it together, all this content, and then the business owner or the marketing manager goes, oh, why are we doing this? Or why are we doing that? And then you end up redoing it, and it just ends up being a bit of a nightmare. The good thing about doing a strategy, everyone is on the same page. Everyone is aligned on the direction. Number 2 is have a constant flow of communication and set really clear expectations about how and when you will communicate, and stick to that. So if it's, okay, great, for the first month we'll do that, work on that strategy together, and then I'll create the first lot of content in advance, and then talk them through the ideas that you're thinking before you go and design a bunch of stuff. And then if they kind of like where you're going, then go through and create the content and the copy and submit it. But let them know that you welcome feedback, just to keep that communication flowing. And then after that, set the expectation, like, that's great, okay, from here we're going to have monthly meetings. You can email with me throughout, but we'll have a face-to-face each month. Here's what to prepare, just so then people know what to expect. They know when they can hear from you, they know how to reach you, and they know that you're across everything. Number 3 would be to, if you do anything twice in your business, write it down. Process was definitely something that we took so long to come up with, and it's just exhausting because you're reinventing the wheel every single time, and it's exhausting, and it hurts your profitability. So create that process really quickly, especially in onboarding one. It also makes it nicer for clients.
It also helps with onboarding new freelancers or in-house staff.
Yeah, absolutely. I would set expectations, much the same as setting your timelines and communication. Set expectations on what you will be creating. Like, have packages and make those packages really clear again, so clients know what to expect, but then they also know what you don't do. And quite easy, and it's a common mistake when people first become social media managers, they really want to do a good job, and they over deliver and they do all this work, and then you end up getting quite burnt out because you're not getting paid for the amount of work that you're doing. It also sets an unrealistic expectation for clients of all the stuff that you're going to do for them, and then eventually when you pull back, they're confused because they think, well, but you used to do this for me, so what's the problem? So being really clear from the get-go what they do and don't get for the package that they've chosen. And then the last one is know your worth and bill appropriately. Obviously, when you're starting out, you might do things a little bit cheaper for experience. I do think that's part of the process, especially if you're working with a really small business. They don't have a lot of budget. You just want to learn and grow. Great. But as soon as you're like, okay, I actually want to freelance properly, or I'm actually pouring a lot of effort into this client, you do need to be checking your bottom line all the time and tracking your time and making sure that your time is being rewarded, because You don't want to be charging someone, like thinking to yourself, oh, $700 sounds like a big number. And then you do the maths and realize you're paying yourself like $4 an hour.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not worth it, So it's just making sure that you know your worth. And I think, like even people who charge $1,000 a month and they do crazy amounts, it's like so hard for that to be worthwhile. The way that I see it is you want to charge enough for your services that you are happy to over deliver. Like when we first started out, we were doing so much work, we were so busy, but we still weren't making that much money because we just had such a high workload and we weren't charging enough, and we were working with small businesses and they couldn't afford it more, and that was really hard. Whereas now that we do know how to price appropriately, I'm so happy to over deliver. Like it's so much easier to go above and beyond because I feel that my time is rewarded and it feels like, you have enough, like there's enough, you receive enough reward for the work that you do that you're happy to do an extra bit here and there, or you're happy to go above and beyond, and that's what you want. That's how you feel satisfied and actually enjoy being a social media manager rather than getting burnt out and resentful.
This is where I'm imagining a standing ovation at the event I talked about, the one we're imagining. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, let me throw this in. What is the real key behind social media success? Or if there are more than one, what are the keys to social media success?
I sound like a broken record, but having a strategy and knowing your why is a huge part about it. And then the other part is always be learning. Always be learning, always be looking at your data, each month, going back and reviewing, okay, right, this post got 24 likes, this post got 7 likes, and this post got 50 likes. Okay, well, what did the 24 and the 50 likes post have that the one with 7 likes didn't? Okay, cool. So like, what's the common theme? All right, then I'll create more content like that. And then always just doing that review and that thinking all the time rather than just blindly creating content for the sake of it and just like, oh, I need to do 12 posts this month. Okay, cool, done, gone. Which is easy to do when you're burnt out, but to actually be successful, you need to be learning and adapting. You want to be putting out stuff that your audience wants to engage with. Like that's the end of it. And so if you're always looking at those insights and that data, you're going to achieve that. And then the third would be care about your community, engage with them, comment on their posts, respond to comments on your post, do it in a timely manner, and don't just say thank you, like come back with a sentence or ask them a question, engage them in that conversation. Make people feel like they have a back and forth, and then that will build a lot of brand love and a lot of more people who come into your page and actually sticking around and caring about your product because the brand has its own personality.
All right, away from marketing, on a wine tasting note. I couldn't bring my bottle of wine this morning because of the rain, so I had a cup of tea instead.
I'll be honest, I forgot it too. I actually had a protein shake as well, so not quite the wine, but let's just imagine it's a glass of Merlot.
Okay, so is Merlot your favorite type of wine, or what type of wine do you like?
Yeah, definitely a Merlot. I'm one of those weird people who I don't really like white wine that much. I'm definitely more of a red gal, and definitely Merlot would be my favorite out of all of them.
All right. And in the same vein, if you could have a glass of wine with any marketing professional, who would it be and why?
That is, there are so many people who I think are really amazing. I think, I've forgotten her name, but the head of social at Duolingo would be wild just to know.
Zaria Pave.
Yeah, like just to know how they got sign off in the first place for being, I don't know, I just want to know what the conversation was like and what their approvals process is like, or if they even have one. Like, I just think they have done such a good job of creating this voice so much, and it's completely unique. It's completely out the gate. So I think they've done a really good job of that.
I was reading up on the strategy. She shared something on LinkedIn a while ago, and I started reading up on it, and I've literally been a fanboy of the way they presented themselves on TikTok, especially. She talked about how they brought up the mascot idea and how they were also able to tie the brand's name with Dua Lipa. So you have Duolingo and Dua Lipa. It was all mind-blowing just thinking about it. And seeing them also on Instagram, what you talked about with community engagement, they're in comment sections. Somebody released a video recently on Instagram. He also released it on TikTok and Twitter about how he's in a toxic relationship with Duolingo. And he was talking about it that he has spent about 400 and something days on Duolingo, but he has not learned Spanish. And it was basically a shade on Duolingo about how he cannot hold a conversation in Spanish, but he has spent those number of days on Duolingo, and Duolingo was right there in the comment section saying that he should have written his caption in Spanish. That was their own focus. They more or less like throw jabs and bans with their community, but it has helped to grow the brand a lot. Honestly, I would love to have a sit down with Zaria. I think she's a global social media manager for Duolingo. I'm sorry. I got caught up on boys.
Yeah, no, they've done a great job. It's amazing.
So, where can we go to learn more about Elise Dalrymple-Keast?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can look up Brand Sitters, our website, which is www.brandsitters.co.nz. Or about me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn, Elise Dalrymple-Keast. Yes, it's very hard to spell, but I'm sure if you're listening to this, my name will be in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, which is the best place to give me a follow. I am trying to be quite active on there at the moment and share a bit more about my story.
I also had a link to your social media profiles and the website in the show notes, so anyone can easily click on it and just redirect them to your page. And if you're listening to this episode and would like to connect with Elise, simply click on the description or show notes of your podcast platform and you'll find Elise's social media profiles there.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. It's 9 a.m. over here. I'm guessing it's 8 p.m. at your end.
It is.
Right?
It is. Yes.
Thank you so much for coming to the pod. We have come to the end of the episode and this has really been a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is the first time I'm talking to someone with experience in social media on this pod, and it has been really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been I've really enjoyed our chat.
Same
and
here.
It was awesome to get to know you.
Thank you, and have a lovely night over there and a great week also.
All right, thank you so much. You have a lovely day.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of Marketing Over Wine. To listen to more career stories of marketing professionals around the world, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or any podcast app of your choice. Or simply visit marketingoverwine.com to stay up to date.